Yes, legends, we're back for another episode. This is 26 Podcast. I'm your host, Rogan McGeorge. Welcome to 26 Podcast. Today, I've got another special guest with me, John Killick. John, how are you?
I'm really good, Rogan, and it's really nice to meet you, and it's an honour to be here, really.
Thank you very much. It's an honour for us to have you, and I know that you just got off the phone just then and said Rogan normally has soccer stars, but I'm much better looking than them. That's why he's got me on. So,
well, I might leave David Beckham out of that. But,
John, as I said to you when I picked you up in the car, I've been following your story, and from the moment Jay suggested that I got you on the podcast, I've been kind of hooked a little bit, as you could probably tell with your story. It's fascinating. It's gone full circle, really, with your life and what you're doing now. You're doing some amazing things now, which is brilliant, which we're going to get along. But we're going to go through your story, your life, which is, if one thing we couldn't say is your life hasn't been boring, has it?
well, it has at times. I've spent a lot of time in jail. There's no getting around that. In fact, I've spent 30 years in jail, and most of it in maximum security. That can be boring, but you often see in movies and various reading books and news reports that jail, this happens, that happens. But and occasionally it does happen. But it's very rare, and most of the time, jail is a very boring place. But the times when particularly in maximum security, when there is violence, and in Goulburn, where I was, there were about, I think, 9 murders in 3 years. They call it the killing fields, and then that place, it was just, it had to be firstly segregated, and every yard segregated, different gangs, different prisoners, different ethnic groups, separated from others. That's how bad it got. So that if you're in a place like that, then it can be a place of fear and violence. But most of the time, in most jails, I would say boredom's probably the worst part of jail. Yeah.
And when you're in jail, I know that we spoke a little bit previously, but is it a constant watch of just something about to kick off? How much do you have to really look after yourself in there?
Once again, it depends on what sort of jail you're in. If you're in a maximum security, and most of the time I was, then there's quite often guys that feel they've got nothing to lose. And also you've got people trying to get control so they can control the drugs or the gambling or wherever it else is. And if they feel you're a threat or oppose that, you could be in trouble. Sometimes somebody just gets out the wrong side of bed of a morning and might be doing 40 years, decides he doesn't like you and either stab you or attack you. So in maximum security jail, I was always wary. I was always on the lookout, kept my eyes. But I used to keep mostly myself, had a few friends, didn't bother anybody, didn't get involved in drugs, and I was always looking for a way out.
Yeah, 5 attempts at escaping.
Yeah.
3 successful attempts.
Yeah, three. Well, the first one was successful to the extent that I got away for a few hours, but they got me later that day. But I just turned 18 and escaped from courthouse. The next one came down at Pentridge, actually, in 1966, when I made an escape attempt from the courthouse again, and this time got tackled at the top of the steps. Can you believe I got tackled in Melbourne? Tackled, rugby league tackled, in a state where they play AFL. There wouldn't have been, it was a screw, and there wouldn't have been another screw in the whole of Pentridge that could have tackled me.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of luck you can have, son. It's fate. I wasn't meant to get away. And so then I was taken to a place called H Division, introduced to H Division, where stripped off, bashed, flogged, kicked, forced to break rocks. And you're virtually back in the 19th century down there. And it was a place of terror, and they called it H for Hell Division, and that's what it was. And we finished up eventually having riots down there. it culminated in a Royal Commission. Things changed, and by the time that famous criminal Chopper Reed got down there, it had changed dramatically. It wasn't anywhere near as bad. But those places are always bad because the people there are especially picked because they are quite often sadistic. They're quite often cowards who have got a bit of power and use that power. So it was a pretty horrible place. And I was actually down there when Ronald Ryan was hanged, the last man in Australia was hanged. And it's pretty horrific to be in a jail knowing that the state is going to take someone that you know, you're going to take them out there and they're going to murder him, because that's what they did. They took him out, and it's a state-sanctioned murder. And there's a lot of doubt now, and it became the last execution in Australia because there's so much doubt on the conviction of whether he was guilty or innocent. And they still write books about it today. They're still doing documentaries about it today. And in fact, the documentary just recently by a friend of mine, Atlante Diosonis, did a great documentary and won a prize for it about it. So, and she threw and showed that there are discrepancies in the evidence, and it was if ever there was a political execution, that was it. The last, and it became the last execution in Australia.
The last one, yeah. It would be a crazy thing to, hang somebody and they're innocent or not guilty of.
Well, see, one of the reasons it became the last because not long before that they found out there was a famous case in England, and there was a guy called John Reginald Christie, bloody same names as me, except the other way around, and he murdered a guy who wasn't definitely, you'd say, mental health problems, incapacitated mentally, and maybe he was 70 cents on a dollar probably. Moved in with his wife and baby, and he was running a boarding house. He raped and murdered the wife, then killed the baby. And then when the guy came home from work, Evans, convinced him to run because they'd blame him. So the guy, being not mentally very strong, took off. They caught him, convicted him, verbal him, and dragged him to the gallows and executed him. Now, about 18 months later, Christie was found with about 6 bodies in the house. They were buried in between the walls, buried outside. He was a mass murderer, and it was his evidence that sent Evans down. So Evans was given a posthumous pardon. It was obvious that he wasn't guilty, but it didn't help him. And that case was prominent, played some prominence in the conviction, and what happened to Ryan. And then people started saying, well, maybe Ryan's another Evans, and maybe we should stop these executions, and there's never been another one since. It's
such a crazy story. It really is.
Yeah.
I know that obviously going back to your story, you were 17 and you unfortunately lost your mum. Did I say the life of crime? Did that start to take place from that moment?
Oh, definitely. Look, you wouldn't have got a better kid than me as far as honesty was concerned. I'd never done anything wrong in my life. That's the weird thing about it. I was born in the middle of a war. I was adopted. I never knew who my real parents were, and it was a dysfunctional family that I was adopted by. My father was he just was definitely an alcoholic, and in those days the hotels used to close at 6, so he'd bring the booze home on the weekends. But he was violent. He was an ex-boxer, pretty good boxer, and he terrorised the neighbourhoods. They were all frightened of him, and he terrorised us. And there were times when we'd be 2 o'clock in the morning, we'd be walking around the streets, terrified, too scared to go home, and or even hiding under the house. And that had a terrible effect on my mother, and she committed suicide when I was 17. I was just starting to find my feet at that stage, and I'd had a girlfriend. I was playing tennis, and that just set me back so much that I left home that day. I blamed him for what happened, and then I had busted appendix and nearly died with that. Went to Melbourne, came back and got mixed up with a few kids older than me, and I was very bitter. Had a chip on my shoulder. Nearly got raped in a boarding house. Didn't know anything about that, and it's just had a chip on my shoulder. Said, "Look, it's me against the world," And next thing, we're out doing shoplifting and stuff like that. Got caught for a housebreaking where they thought there was a lot of money in, and went out to Long Bay at 17, and it was very tough. It was one of the toughest jails in Australia at the time, and I had to learn the ropes pretty quick. And I learnt that you've got to live by a criminal code to survive in jail. And the criminal code in jail is it's the opposite of the code and ethics that we live by here. Because if you're seeing someone get bashed here now, it's sort of we want to stop it or do something about it or ring the police or do something. But in jail, you just turn back to it and walk away. And you don't tell on anybody. Guys were raping young guys and getting away with it. It was just a terrible system, but it was a system that was sort of us against them. And you can do whatever you can do if you can get away with it. And that's what I was taught and started to live by the code of ethics of criminals. It's very, people don't realise what jail was like in those days. You lived in a cell, three of you in a cell, lights off at 9 o'clock. There was no radio, no TV, no pyjamas, no shoots, just dirty blankets. You're lucky to get a book if you've got a paperback book or Western. No toilet. You had a bucket in a corner for three guys, and this was January when I went there. You can imagine how hot it was. And a dirty old bucket of water, jug of water. You'd go down there, be 50 of you in a yard with nothing to do. If you got a visit, it was once a fortnight, and it was there was wire mesh between you, and you'd have a screw standing right next to you. If you wrote a letter, it was one page. You wrote it with pen and ink, and they'd read it, and if it didn't like it, they'd rip it up and write another one. No phone calls. Virtually your life, as you knew it, came to a stand. It was like being on another planet, and no relationship could last very long in it. And so what happened is crims became more criminally inclined and stuck together and formed criminal relationships.
And then it becomes a us versus you, doesn't it? Sort of scenario.
That's right. And so the attitude I took, well, if I'm going to be a crim, I'm going to be a bank robber because that's where the money was. And so that's what I did. I virtually turned to robbing banks.
So when you make that decision, that's your decision where you go, right, you were in prison, you had been doing shoplifting. I believe your first one was for your first prison sentence was for the jewellery, was that?
Yeah, did it. We did. I was actually going with a girl in Bathurst and in Orange. And I'd been to Bathurst and saw this Western Stores, and it was just huge. But I realised that I could see from the skylights there were no alarms there, and the back door looked like it was pretty easy to get through. And I just thought, you could get in here and clean this place out. So I mentioned it to Barry, the brother of my girlfriend, and then he went to Sydney, and then I was with, I'll never forget, I was with Barbara in a cafe, and they turned up in a car. He had two other guys, and one was an older guy, and another one was called Sparrow, who later became a famous pickpocket shoplifter. But they said, come on, John, we're going to Bathurst. I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, the Western Stores, we're going to do it. So I went, and Barbara said, don't go. And I said, no, I never saw her again. And they lowered me down from we got up on top of the roof, lowered me down, and I opened the back door, we got in, filled up all the suitcase with heaps of stuff, also a lot of jewellery, and we had, I think it was tabled about £22,000 worth of property. That's $44,000. In 1960, you're looking at close to $500,000. Yeah. So it's more than what it seemed. And they were driving along, and next thing, this guy, he was 39-year-old. I was 18. He said, "We're running out of petrol." I said, "Well, stop and get some." He said, "We can't. It's a hot car." And that's the first I knew it was a hot car. Next thing, they're milking petrol. Cops come. We take off, run off, and get caught. He got away. Then we go to Lithgow police station, and they strip us off, and Sparrow wouldn't take his socks off. And the cop said, "Just take them off. We're used to smelly feet." And this is June, freezing cold in Bathurst, in Lithgow, this was, and he wouldn't take his socks off. And I said, "Just take them off, He took them off, and these diamond rings fell out. So, and he was like that all his life, Sparrow. And he eventually brought me undone in 1966. But that was when I should have realised then that never trust Sparrow. So, yeah, I did a couple of years there over that. Try to escape. That's when I tried to escape. I did get away, actually. The four of us were going to escape from Bathurst Courthouse. And the idea was push the cops in the back. They used to take us in there unhandcuffed, can you believe it, in the court and come out. Two cops, four guys.
Interesting.
I said, "Yeah, just push me back. We'll run off 4 different directions. Try and steal a push bike or something and take off. They're not going to get the four of us." And so we come out, and I pushed this big old fat old sergeant in the back. He's stumbling forward. And I think he went down. I'm not sure. He went to his knees. And then I took off. And the other guys sung out, "Good luck, Johnny." And next thing, the other cops out chased me. Well, he couldn't catch a runaway kid from a kindergarten, this guy, so he knew he wasn't going to get me. He pulled his gun out and started firing shots. But he missed. And so I got away, ripped off my jumper, but I knew they don't know who they're looking for yet. But, looking for one guy, they're going to surround the place. So I saw this chook pen. I got in this chook pen. But they made a bit of a noise. And an old lady, an old Italian lady, she heard it. She saw me going in there. So they never would have got me. But when she saw cops going past, she waved them over, pointed them in there, so they got me. So then I remember they put me in a what they call the Black Peter, and it's just a totally black cell with nothing in it, cold, and you're on bread and water for 2 days, and then they bring you out, and so there's a Bible in the corner, but you can't read it because there's no light in there, and that was pretty scary because I've never been in this sort of situation, and I remember I was training, going up, and then I started singing, and the acoustics were good in there, and then they come and told me to shut up. They said, "We thought you'd been murdered, And I said, "Well, any chance of a plate of Uncle Toby's oats?" They just laughed. They said, "Yeah, we'll bring it. You want milk with that?" I said, "Yeah." Yeah, so then they take me to the governor a couple of days later, and he said, "Do you realise what you've done?" He was sitting there in one of them country suits, and just typical country bumpkin, and he said, "You realise what you've done?" I said, "Yeah, I tried to escape. I didn't get away." He said, No. He said, "You will never, ever go to minimum security." He said, "And I think you'll be coming to jail for the rest of your life." He said, "So you'll spend the rest of your life in maximum security." And that was sort of the attitude, And they were right. They sent me to Goulburn, maximum security. But Goulburn was a place where it was a first-timers jail, but it was maximum security, and there were a lot of murderers there and that. And guess what? I'm meeting all these guys that were famous. I used to listen to police files on the radio as a kid, and they're all there. Kingsgrove Slasher was there, and bloody Bega Bomber and Bradley the Kidnapper, they're all there. And all these famous crimes. And they're just ordinary people when you meet them. And people say, "What? the murderers look any different? They didn't. And they just look like ordinary people. It's hard to tell. Now and again you'll meet one that, like the Bega bomber was a weird little guy. He had a fallout with the local cops, so he put the whole bloody drum full of dynamite under the house and blew it up and killed the cop, his wife, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, I think one of the kids too. Yeah.
But he was different when you met him. Like, he was a strange...
No, he was a bit. He looked a bit strange. Yeah, tubby little guy. Yeah, but most of them. There was one guy too, just a horrific guy, named Jack. He'd been there a long time. He lived in a country town. These two little kids went missing, about 6 boys, and they led a search party. And he ran into a cave and ran out and said, "I've found them." And the rats had got them. They found all their genitals had been chewed off, and it was him. And they found they were going to lynch him, and the cops had to get him to another town. So he was there too. And what amazed me in those days, they were walking around this jail. If they were walking around the jail now, they'd be killed, killed straight away. So these days they put them on special protection. But that was the first timers jail, and the guys there they weren't real criminals in the sense that they were professional criminals. They were more like killers, and some of those guys never come back to jail, stuff like that. But anyway, those guys were sort of walking around, and I got put in a tailor shop with a guy called Dave Scanlon, who turned out to be the Kingsgrove Slasher. Now, the Kingsgrove Slasher was a guy who he'd terrorised Kingsgrove for 18 months, climbing into windows, slashing girls' things, night dress. In the end, he was getting worse and worse. And all I knew is the Kingsgrove Slasher. I didn't know what he'd done. I didn't realise how severe, actually, because he got 18 years. But he sort of became my mentor, the Kingsgrove Slasher. And I remember, I think I told you, I had quite a few fights at Bathurst, but I had a couple of fights at Goulburn too. And one fight I had, this guy was called Big Bruce, and he was just a giant of a guy. He's trained all the time, and anyways, he's picked a fight with me, and we had to. They used to let you fight the screw every Saturday morning in a school area, and the guy, the screw used to step in if it got out of hand. If someone got knocked down, you had to step back. So it was fair fight, and but. Yeah, I was a bit scared of this guy because he had the reputation. He was about 3 stone heavier, 3 years older, and what I didn't know is a southpaw. And as soon as we come in, he's dropped me first up. Bloody just dropped me with a left, And anyway, a couple of times I got in and got him. I could see, he didn't like getting hit, but he's beat me. This guy's knocked me down about 4 or 5 times, and then the screw stopped the fight, and still on my feet. I kept getting back up, and he was boasting, I knocked him down 5 times, and Slasher jumped in and said, well, he must have kept getting back up again. And a few guys nodded because they didn't like this guy. Anyway, a mate of mine, when Bruce was leaving, Big Bruce got out. When a mate of mine was getting out, he went up to Big Bruce. He used to be a repossessor, this guy, a mate of mine, big guy too. He just grabbed him, king at him, put him in a headlock, kneed him in the face, and put him in hospital. Because so in those days, you had real mates. These days they'll either stab you or something. But the reason I'm pointing that out because when I was leaving, I used to win all the races there, but the Kingsgrove Slasher couldn't handle. He wouldn't race against me because he was such a good runner, and he could beat me in a long distance, but he couldn't beat me in a 440. And when I was leaving, he said, "John, can you get me a girlfriend?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll try it." So Dad meets me, you wouldn't believe it, I get off the train, and I picked up a girl on the train, sitting next to her. Her name was Colleen, but Dad's waiting for me at Central, so I was going to rush her off. And so the next thing, we're all going in a pub, and Dad's driving her bloody crazy, talking to her and telling her the stories and all this and that. And so in the end, she decides to leave. So I knew it stuffed. I said, "Would you like to have a pen friend?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love a pen friend." She said, "I saw a good-looking guy." And she said, "What's his name?" I said, "Dave Scanlon." She said, okay. She said, I'll write Dave Scow. I said, yeah. She said, what's he in for? I said, you would have read about him. I said, it was the Kingsgrove Slashes. She went, whack, hit me, punched me straight in the head.
Did she?
Yeah. And my old man's saying, she got you on the left hook, John. Yeah, bloody idiot. You know? So that was my sort of introduction to Kingsgrove Slash and all that. And but from there, after that, I became a bank robber, and I got pretty good at robbing banks. And they in 1986, there was a big write-up in the Telegraph from the Armed Hold-Up Squad, and I've got a copy of it. And they said that I was the forerunner. They got the Armed Robbery Squad going in '66 over me. And they said that I gave them hell robbing banks, and that eventually I was caught down in Melbourne, which is what. And what people didn't realise in those days, we were talking about robbing banks at a party about 9 months ago, and I mentioned about how the tellers had guns, and this woman said, "We don't carry guns," because she worked in a bank. "We don't carry guns." And I said, "Well, no, but you," she said, "We've never carried guns." And I looked at her, she's about 33. And I said, "Well, I was shot at by tellers when you weren't even alive."
Yeah.
I said, "So don't tell me that I didn't. I nearly got shot by a teller." And she sort of shut up a bit then, because she realised I must know what I'm talking about. But you know, it's just that attitude. You're sort of lying, you know. But tellers used to carry guns. They were trained. And in '66, I got chased by tellers down here in Melbourne at Kensington, and robbed the Commonwealth Bank, and they actually fired shots at me, and I got away, but it was a pretty close call.
That was like literally the bullet was 3 inches from you on it. Was that one?
No, that was in a helicopter. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. No, they hit the boot. And I opened the door and I went like that, and they dived down behind the car that I got in, and then a truck driver tried to cut me off. I went up around a footpath, just got around him, and I used to time it. I used to time the bank robbery, so I had a good getaway route, and I'd already done the timing the night before, or a couple of nights before, and what happened, I had it timed, run across, get in the car, drive to a dead end, run across this big oval, and catch the train. And it was all precision, you know. But what had happened is that when I got to the dead end, the truck driver chased me. And I looked back, and further down, the tellers were also still coming. And I was that angry with a truck driver, because I could have got shot, you know. So I jumped down and ran up to the truck, and he saw me, and he wound the window up, you know. So I tapped on the window and said, what are you going to do now? And he's going like that. Honestly, he's like that. And I just laughed and ran off. But that cost me precious seconds. I shouldn't have done it. That's ego, see? That's ego. And ran across, and I'm running across, I'll never forget it, the field, and I was pretty fast running. And I'm about 10 metres away. There's this little railway guy, he's watching me. And when I'm nearly there, he went, close the gate. And what they did, I don't know if they still do it, in Melbourne, they used to close the gates, and that was it, you couldn't get in until the next train. I ran up and said, "Look, you've got to let me in, I've got to get that train." He said, "Too late, fella, too late." I said, "No, I've got to get." He said, "Too late." And then the train went. And then he opened the door, he went like it, looked at me, you know. I thought about shooting him, you know. What are you going to do? So I looked around, and I saw the truck driver and the tellers looking at me. They were about 100 metres away. So, but they weren't looking at me. They were sort of looking across, and I thought they might have thought I got the train. So I've jumped down the embankment, and there was this big wire fence, and it was huge. Somehow, I don't know, desperation, I managed to climb over it with the bag, jump down into this yard. It was a factory. And they had a guard at the top, at the front. And 2 guys sitting there in the front of his car, there were a lot of cars there, eating lunch. And I got in the back, just showing the guy, I said, look, fellas, I'm in a bit of trouble. I want you to get me to the city. And the older bloke looked, he said, we can do that for you. I mean, just cool as a cucumber. We can do that for you. And the other bloke said, yeah. I said, I've got to watch these guys. So I've got to watch these guys. So they drove me through. I waved past the security guy, and then we could hear sirens everywhere. And one of the guys said, geez, they're after somebody. I said, yeah, they're always after somebody, you know. We all knew it was me they're looking at. So
had they not asked for anything in return?
We were driving along, and I had the gun, see, and we're driving along, and I started talking to them about football, you know, and they said, oh yeah, they barracked for Collingwood. They were mad Collingwood supporters. I said, I'm Geelong, you know, myself, and anyway, on the outskirts of the city, I said, look, this will do. Can you drive? He said, yeah. And I had a bundle of money. I handed him a bundle of money, the driver. I said, look, take this for the petrol. He said, no, I said, take this. He said, well, what's it for? I said, petrol. He said, I wouldn't come that much. I said, we'll put the rest on the Maggies to win the premiership. I said, if they win, remember me. He said, I'll do that. They got to the final. They got beat by a point by St Kilda on the siren. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
on the siren?
Yeah. Yeah, and a guy called Breen, that memory, the guy called Breen, remember this, right? He kicked a goal from near the halfway line and beat him. And guess what? St Kilda were trained by a copper, Alan Jones. The irony of it, you know, the irony of it. So, but I always had a soft spot, because on the news that night, I got home and watched the news, and they didn't go to the cops. They never ever went to the cops about. I thought I've always had a soft spot for Collingwood because of these guys, and I think they were rooting for me, hoping I'd get away. But then the truck driver comes on, right? And the truck driver said, "Yeah, I chased him." He said, "Come to a dead end." So I jumped out of the thing, and he said he ran away like a cur dog, you know.
No, he's not said that. Oh.
And they said, "Oh, he had a gun." He said, "You know what I would have done?" He said, "Well, that, don't you?" He said. So I said, "Oh, fair enough." I said, "That's his version." Well, when they got me, we're going through court, and I was with the Screws, and my lawyer was there, and I recognised him. I said, "That's the bloody guy. That's the truck driver." He said, "Yeah, he's going to testify today." And I said, "Oh, is he?" And I knew what he was going to say. He was going to say, "I terrorised you, I did this and I did that." So, and that's going to get me extra years. So I said, "I just want to say," they said, "I can't." I walked there, you know. I was handcuffed. I said, "Good day." I said, "Remember," I said, "I was a cur dog." I said, "I ran like a thing. You chased me." I said, "Remember that?" I said, "Channel 9. And he turned white because he's going to blow it. If he gets up and gives a different version, we got him on fucking channel.
Yeah.
So guess what? He didn't give any evidence. So that saved me a few years, you know, that I would have got. So I just had these stuff come to mind. I'm probably going on too much here, but these things are important. Now I'm back down in Melbourne and Pentridge, all this stuff's coming back. You know, I just remember it all. And like, I remember dates. I got to think about dates, you know, and stuff like that. Because 3rd of February '67, they hanged Ronald Ryan, and in '68, as I said, I went down to Hayes fishing, didn't make it, and in '68, had another go. There were 3 of us. I actually overpowered the prison officer, hit him with an iron bar. And he's just ashamed he'd done those things. But he was going to shoot me. He admitted later he was going to shoot me. He's gone for his gun. I hit him with an iron bar that I had weight spar. And he didn't go down. He's a big Dutch guy. He didn't go down. And you see in a movie, say they just give him a bit of tap and they go out and they're out, you know. But I hit him, so I hit him again. He didn't go down again, you know. And blood spurting out of his head, a terrible thing. I thought, shit, did I do this? His hat fell to the floor. And then he's tried to get over to, there was a big alarm bell on the thing, and I hit him. I hit him in the chin. He went down. I grabbed his gun, and I said, "Listen, couldn't get the keys. Where are the keys? Because that was the idea, get out. And he said, I haven't got the keys. I said, where are the keys? He said, since Ryan and Walker escaped, they don't let us have the keys anymore. So we were trapped in a wing. Next thing, someone's run to the thing. They heard the commotion. Said, John, his name was John DeBoer. So I ran out and pointed the gun at him. I said, stay where you are, you're dead. And he dived into the shadows and ran off screaming. Next thing, sirens going everywhere. And my mate said, quick, blow the lock off. I said, it doesn't work. I know it doesn't work, you know. You can't blow the lock off the chain, you know, with a gun. It doesn't work.
Was that your second attempt?
Yeah, well, that was third, because the one where I was caught in the chook pen. Yeah, this is the second attempt in Pentridge.
Yes, second,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, and the other one on the courthouse, I got tackled at the top of the steps.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So 4 years in Hastings, we had a siege there. They brought in 18 cars. You can see it in the chicken on the newspaper. So brought in 18 carloads of police. SWAT team. I don't need to call them SWAT team then, but they had to wake up an ammunition guy and get more ammunition from him. They had bloody tear gas, the whole works. Police commissioner came in. The governor was there. But what saved me that all the loudspeakers were on. You had all the wings, all the guys could hear it, all the lights were on. And the governor had a reputation for a man of his word. And lots of deals are done in jail. So I angled to do a deal so everybody would hear it. And I knew he wouldn't go back on his word. And the deal was, in the end, he didn't want to do it, but in the end, he agreed that, A, we wouldn't get bashed, because they would have killed us, you know, for what I'd done. And B, it'd be kept in low court. Now, the screws, when he agreed to that, and I came down, and then Jeff went before me. He went down before any deals done, Jeff Ponton. And then I went down after the deals were done. And I knew everybody heard it. I thought if he goes back on that deal, you know, his name will be mud. No one will ever do a deal with him again. And then Ponton came down after me. Now, I gave Ponton the gun. They said, throw the gun down. I said, no, I gave it to Ponton because I thought if I throw the gun down and come down, they're just going to run up and kill him. You know? But if I give him a gun, they won't. So I left him with a gun. But I was worried he was going to kill himself. You know? But I had to take that risk. So I went down, but I was worried about that. But he came down shortly after. 4 years, another 4 years in Hate Division for that. But they kept their word. I didn't get bashed. Governor used to come down every day, say, you're right, yeah, I'm right. And the screws were going to go out and strike. We got 18 months. And if it had been in bigger court, probably would have got 15 years. If that happened today, I would have been killed for sure. Different time. But what happened is that they did two things. About a bit after a week after it happened, they came down. I was in the end cell. It was a Friday night. The governor had gone home, and he checked on me, you know. And they opened the cell door, and I thought, here it comes. The whole 6 of them there. They said, step out. And I thought, here it comes, you know. They're going to break the rules here. I stepped out. I thought I was going to really get it. Left turn, went up, put me in the bloody death cell where Ryan used to be. Now, Ryan was dead by this time. And they put me in there and said, Officer DeBoer died at 3 o'clock this afternoon. You're going to swing like Ryan, you bastard, and walked away. Now, they left me there all weekend. And, you know, it was near drove me crazy. I thought, because they will kill me. They will hang me because they hang Ryan, and that was done in the spur of the moment sort of thing, where they escaped and there was simultaneous shots fired. With me, it was premeditated. I waited at the bottom of the steps for the screw to come down, and I whacked him. I'd have gone. And if he died, you know. And I was thinking, you know, thinking ahead, you're a chess player, John. You think. If this screw died, you wouldn't have a couple of shit-kicking screws coming down China. You'd have the homicide. They'd come down, they'd grab you and they'd take you into town, they'd do proper interviews and tie you up and charge you. Not screws. this wouldn't happen. But you still had to think they can do what they want to do. So maybe they hold me for a while to terrorise me before they. So it was possible it happened, and so I think I aged a bit when that happened. But Sunday night they came in, stepped back, took me back to cell, said officer board's recovered, and walked off. They were laughing. Yeah. So, and then finally we had the riots down Hayes Division when it just got too much for everybody, all the bastions and the breaking of rocks and all that. And because we used to, when you went down to break rocks, you had to break rocks. You had a big hammer, and you'd break these big boulders into rocks about the size of your fist. If they were bigger or smaller, you'd likely get bashed. And then in the afternoon, you'd sit in a chair, and those smaller rocks, the size of your fist, you'd use a smaller hammer and chip them down to the size of your fingernail. And once again, they'd check to see the size. It's impossible to do it. And that's what you'd do down the labios. Futile work. And, you're sort of back in the 18th or 19th century. Anyway, finally the riots started, and Grinley came down, the governor, and they were just telling him to get fucked. Nobody could believe it. They were just with the hammers. They were smashing walls, letting their taps run all night. Any screw tried to bash them, they were bashing back. I mean, it's the whole place. You had the conscientious objectors. There was they were at the time getting with the Vietnam War. They had a lot of support. Some of them were in jail, and they had support from lawyers. And it was a time of protest right around the world. Right around the world, 68, 69, 70. Just protests, particularly 68, but all around that time, about the Vietnam War and everything else. And it just sort of hit a chord, and all the crims united, right up top. You have a jail up there, C Division, and they knew they were in trouble. So Grinley came down, making a few promises, and they just told him to fuck off. They said, we don't believe you. And then, you wouldn't believe it, he's turned around and he said, John Killick will tell you I'm a man of my word. This is in the middle of the most serious riot in the history of Penrith, and the governor's asking me for a personal reference. Can you believe it? And I had to say, they said, well, what about it? I said, well, I've got to say that he kept his word. What else am I going to say?
Because he did.
Yeah, he did. I said he kept his word. And he said, thank you, Killick. So then Stan Taylor, who turned out to be the Russell Street bomber after that, said, John's word's good enough for me. So they actually cooled it down and started doing negotiation over that. So that was the payback that he got from me for keeping his word. And I was just lucky that he was governor. Other people had told me anyone else had been governor, I'd have been dead probably. Yeah. So eventually I got out there in 70. I testified at the Royal Commission in 72. Then they extradited me to Sydney on a couple of banks up there. I didn't get very long because all the time I'd done. I got out, met Gloria, got married, and went straight for about 5 years. Had shops and photographic business. Up and down, had a baby, and lived. When you consider what I'd been through, and I still had that rage in me, but when you consider what I'd been through, I was able to control it, and I thought I did pretty good.
Was it the gambling that got you back to crime?
The gambling, I was always a gambler, bad gambler. When I didn't mention that, but when I was in the 60s robbing those banks, I was putting $1,000 at a time on a horse, $800 at a time. That was huge. That was huge in those days. And so that had a bit to do with it. And I'd never had any, never learnt at all, been taught or talked to psych or anything. So it just stayed the way it was. The only thing I ever did learn was writing. I actually did some, when I was in Hayes Division, did some correspondence courses. And I did short story writing. And I was taught by this, just lucky enough, South Australian Tab, TAFE to have a guy called Ian Moody, who was a pretty famous poet, and he said, John, there's no money in writing. I drive a taxi, but if you want to learn, I'll teach you. And I said, I'll show him how good I am. And I sent him this story, and it was a brilliant story. And I said, I'll wait till I get the A+, tell me how good I am. And he gives me a C-. red biro all through it, telling me where I went wrong. And I was shattered. And I realised I knew nothing about writing, you know. It's all I can tell stories, but I couldn't write. And he took me through gradually, and in the end, I was getting A+. And then I got a scholarship when I got out, through him, recommended. Because Gough Whitlam was Prime Minister, and he was handing out scholarships like candy, you know. Even if you couldn't read or write, he might give you a scholarship if he's in a good mood, you know.
Depending what day you get him on.
That was Gough Whitlam, you know. So, yeah, I got a scholarship. But the fact is that when I got out, I had stories published in Man magazine. I had a story published called The Perfect Alibi. And they liked it, and they published it overseas. Now, skip now to 78. Been out 5.5 years, so I'm going pretty well. Up and down, but I did lose a shop gambling in 1974. I lost a shop.
What year did you meet Gloria, sorry?
I met Gloria in 1973.
73, yeah.
And that was at a chess tournament. I was working in a factory, coming from the factory and playing a chess. She was running a chess tournament, and for a lady, she's getting paid, and I kept asking for a date, and she wouldn't be in it. And I thought I'd got to be a chance because all those chess guys are a bit weird. You know, I thought, like here I am, an ex-crim, working in a factory, coming in, no chance to study, playing against these nerds that play all the time. And I thought, if they're any good, they'd be in a higher tournament. So after I beat a couple of them, I thought, I could win this. So when she wouldn't go out, I said, well, how about if I win this tournament? Will you go at me then? She said, if you win the tournament, yes. I won the tournament. Yeah. And that's how it started. And we finished up getting married from there. So maybe that was fate, I think. But then I lost the shop gambling. We had a shop up at Eleanor Heights, and I was betting with an SP book and lost that much in one day that I had to give him the shop. And I didn't give him the shop. I gave my brother the shop, and I took off, because, he started making threats, stuff like that. He had coppers on the side, and once he started doing that, I was actually going to pay him so much a month. I could have done it. And when he started making threats and coppers and this and that, and so I just gave my brother the shop. And so you wouldn't believe it. A couple of years after that, we went into Gloria's father was sick, and he was actually yellow. We went in, and he was in the intensive care unit at Royal North Shore. Go in there. There's Jack, the guy, the bookie. He's holding his wife's hand. He's the guy I didn't pay. So he jumped up and I jumped. We went out in the car park and we punched on for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then he ran inside. He ran out of steam and ran inside. And when he ran in, I said, you're still not getting paid. But you wouldn't believe you're going to run into someone in intensive care. Gloria couldn't believe it. She said, how could you do it? Dad said, what's happening? Her father was dying. Why did John run off? Why did the other guy run off? And his wife was crook too. But there was that much hate there and we punched on.
Yeah.
And I just felt so good. He kicked me a couple of times. I wasn't expecting that. But I had him beat. He ran inside, And he ran out of steam because I always kept fit. That was a big thing too, And so he ran inside and I said, you're not getting paid. Because he had the coppers looking for me too.
Right.
So, yeah. And so 78, you wouldn't believe it, I go to the races, Canterbury, lost badly. And I got a few things in hock, So I'm on the edge. And we'd been living in South Australia for a couple of years, come back because Dad was sick. And I bump into this guy. He said, John, we start talking. I said, how'd you go? He said, I lost. He said, John, you're a great bank robber. He said, I want to rob a bank with you. I said, no. I said, I haven't even got a gun. He said, yeah, but you could get a gun. He said, I want to rob a bank with you. And I thought, I haven't robbed a bank for a while.
Was it not even in your mind to go back to?
No. And I thought about it. And I approached another mate that I knew, and he had a gun. So the three of us get together, decide we're going to hit a bank. And it was over in South Australia because I'd seen, it was in my mind that the German was there because I'd seen a bank in South Australia while I was there, and I was working all the time I was over there. I was working at Coles and that, but every Friday afternoon I went in there, they had all this money on the back of the counter, just heaps of it. And I thought, Friday afternoon, 3 guys, we can get this, you know. So I said, okay, so we'll do it. So I introduced him to the other guy, but I didn't say who they were. So I gave them different names so they didn't know each other. So I was the only one holding it together. I go down to see Greg with his wife. He had a baby. It's 2 days before we were going to leave for the bank. And honestly, they're fighting in the kitchen. The baby's crying. They're fighting near the sink, and there's a noodle there. And they've been fighting over who gets over heroin. And I remember alarm bells. I didn't know much about it at that stage, but I remember a guy who was Harry, who'd been a junkie himself and lost 90% of his liver, and told me, John, never trust a junkie, never trust a junkie. And I thought, there's no way I'm doing this bank with this guy. So I called him out and said, look, I said, there was no food in the cupboard, the baby was crying. I said, I'm not doing it. He said, oh, John, it's not what it looks like. I said, it is what it looks like. So I'm not doing it. So he went ahead and did it with the other guy and took his wife. So what happened, his wife drove the car. They go in and do the bank, but apparently the wife panicked, and when they get around to the lane, they jump out of a car, run to another car, stolen, a proper car. They'd had a stolen car. One of the guys could steal the car. A little Italian kid heard the commotion, coming around skidding like a maniac, panicking, you know, took the number. So the next thing, he's got the number, they're looking for this car. Well, they booked in on a motel and at Renmark in South Australia. Didn't even drive back to Sydney. And they've come and surrounded him because they had a number plate. So when they've got him, they've got the two of them, they've found him with a gun, money, the lot. They said, who's the third guy? Who's the other guy? They said, we know your mistress was driving. And they said, you, but who did you do the bank with? And he gave him a guy, because I introduced Bill, he gave him a guy called Bill, and I had a mate, Bill, and they went to this Bill and they got him and they bashed him. But he had an alibi that it wasn't him. And then when they realised, because later on we saw the statements, when we realised our lawyer got the statements, and he'd try to keep me out of it. But when they knew that Bill wasn't Bill, they said to him, either you give us the guy or we charge your wife. So he said, I did it. Well, 6 people saw me in Sydney that afternoon. I was in Sydney. And it was impossible for me to have done it. They couldn't do it. So they come and arrest me, and they take Gloria to, so she can't get a lawyer. Got my baby there, threatening to keep me as a ward of estate, and I still refused to say anything, you know. And so they just verbal me. They made up a thing. But they didn't know much about it. And all they did is, it was just such a fake record of interview. They just said that yeah, look, I met up with Greg because that's the guy. And no, somebody else. They said, I'm not giving any names. So they made out I'm trying to protect Greg. And he was singing like a bird, you know. And met him over there, stole a car, went in, we robbed the bank, caught a plane back. Well, the thing is, they didn't have any facts or anything to back it up. And like, as later on I dissected it and said, if I'm a cop, and somebody's confessing to a bank, he said, I got in a plane. I say, all right, what name did you travel under? Where were you seated? Were you in the middle? I'll see. Because that's when you nail them. That's when you nail them. None of that was ours. When you got to Adelaide, you knocked a car. What sort of car did you knock? You know, how did you knock it? What technique did you use? You know, when you went into the bank, you know, how many customers there? How many tellers were there? None of this, see? When you flew back, what name did you use? I mean, they didn't have any of that. And yet that record of interview kept me, because the judges go along with it, kept me in jail for 4 months. And then I got extradited to South Australia because Rogerson got up and viewed me. Can you believe it? And Rogerson got up and said that they called him over to South Australia and got up and said that I told him during the lunch break, we're having an extradition hearing. I had 6 witnesses swear they'd saw me in Sydney at different times. One was a lady who I used to get a thing called the Sportsman, because I was a mad bet on the horses, and it was the Bible for gambling. And she got up. It's a woman of good character, had a business all her life. Said John comes in every Friday and he came in. Now, they gave evidence. The only plane out of South Australia after the robbery touched down at about 3 minutes past 8. And it was just impossible. All the people who'd seen me at various times, I couldn't have done it. And later on I went to the High Court of Australia. But anyway, they found me guilty. And one of the things they found me guilty on was that they said he wrote a story called The Perfect Alibi. They said, there it is. They said, this is a man who thinks alibis. Somehow he's come up with a perfect alibi. And the stupid jury is sitting there like that. And then the judge summed up against me, and I went down. Later on, I won it in the High Court of Australia. But I did 3.5 years before I won it. And I had all those convictions quashed. And it stuffed my marriage. By the time I got out, my marriage was stuffed.
Yeah, of course.
And that's when I went off the rails, got hooked up with a girl half my age, Jackie. And
she was the one that did the shoplift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got hooked up with her. She used to come out and see me at Adelaide Jail. And so when, she ran off from home and come to our place, finished up having an affair with her. Shouldn't have, but I was just doing it in the world, and that was it. We spent 3.5 years going around Australia doing mostly shoplifting, and then eventually doing bank robberies, and did a lot of bank robberies.
You did them together?
No, I did them.
You did them, yeah.
They think she had something to do with it.
Right.
She didn't.
When you're doing a bank robbery, John, how much, I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but how much planning do you have to do to go in and do a bank?
I always used to look at it at the getaway route. I think robbing a bank was pretty easy in those days. But what I did, I started spraying the cameras. So I'd go in and spray the cameras. So they just haven't got it. They haven't got your movements, for a start. Yeah. But I got precise movements. So that obliterated that out. That frustrated them a bit. But the thing is, you've got to believe that you are in charge when you go in there. And the only way you're going to be in charge is by talking with authority and showing them the gun and convincing them that if you have to, you'll use it. Now, it's the wrong thing. It's intimidation. You're traumatising some people. It's a horrible thing. And I'm totally against it now, and I preach and tell young ones that's wrong. You got to remember, all this stuff was last century, not this century. It was all last century. And the thing is that it was wrong, but I didn't see it that way. I saw it that banks had foreclosed on our home when I was young. We'd finished in a bloody rotten place, helped my mother kill herself. She was depressed. And banks did this, banks did that. So it was me against the banks, but it wasn't. It was me against the people in the banks. And I accept that, and I've accepted I've worked with psychs on it, and I've accepted that if there's 10 people in the bank, 8 of them probably get over it okay, but there could be 2 that don't, and you could have traumatised those people and perhaps even ruin their life. So that's why armed robbers do get big sentences, and I've explained this to young guys. There was one bank I robbed in Brisbane, and I ran in and told everybody, keep where they were, gave the guy the bag and said everyone stay. And this old lady started to walk out. And I said, no, you stay where you are, ma'am. She said, I'm not staying anywhere, and walked out. Now, what am I going to do? So I had visions of her running out screaming, help, bank, robbery bank, So, I got the first lot of money and it ran out. So it probably cost me 10, 15,000. But she never went anywhere. So there was never any mention. She just decided, no, she didn't want any part of this and went home. She never went to cops, didn't do any views. Just none of her business,
She just wanted to go home, get over dinner.
She'd probably say to the kids that night, some bloody bloke running and robbing a bank.
Just so casual. You spoke online about, and we spoke about it in the car on the way here, about how, for me, I've never been inside. I only just watch documentaries, I read online. Yeah. But rape is a real thing that happens, isn't it, in prisons?
But particularly when I first went into jail. See, you've got to put yourself in. It's these days. You've got condom machines on the walls. You've got openly gay guys coming in who declare themselves gay. Now, so a lot of them sell themselves. Others do hook up with somebody. And they're more interested in drugs than sex, most of them. There's not a lot of it goes on. I don't think it's a lot of standard. Now and again it'll happen. It'll always happen, but it's not prevalent like it used to be. But back in my time, there were no drugs when I first went in. Guys didn't have television, had nothing. So you're putting 3 guys in a cell. One guy's pretty. The other 2 guys got nothing to do. They're going to look at him, and quite often that's what happens. They decide that he's going to be the fun for the night. Now, also, it was dangerous for anyone who did it. But they just didn't go out of their way to catch him, because if they did catch him, or anyone give him up, it was very bad publicity. Rapes in jail, they used to hush all that stuff up. So they just often just move him out of a jail instead of doing anything about it. And the rapists knew that. Now, I remember 1963, I was in Long Bay, and at a stage I was 21, and we were three of us in a cell, and I was wrestling with a young guy. We were wrestling. We had pajamas on, and I'll never forget it. Lights gone off at 9, and we're just wrestling, and sort of laughing a bit. The doors fly open. Bloody 4 big screws are there, torches, and a couple more outside. Stood us up, made us drop our pajamas, and if we'd have had a hard on, would have been charged with homosexuality. So that's how it used to be. Now it's encouraged. It's a total turnaround. We're living in a different society outside. Yeah. We're living in a different society inside. And I don't think that rape is anywhere near as prevalent as it used to be in the prisons. There's still a lot of standover in jail because it's drugs. Drugs. What happens? The people that control drugs in jail often give it to people on credit, and junkies being junkies will get stuff and then can't pay for it. Then they'll get their parents or get the girl, even if the girl's trying to feed the family, to put money, and they put money in these guys' accounts or in their family's accounts or their friends' accounts, and that's how it happens. And eventually they can't pay it and they go on protection. And Goulburn Jail, half of the guys in Goulburn are on protection.
We're going to move on to when you met Lucy.
Yeah.
And how you met her. I believe you met her at a party, and as I said to you again a little earlier, you remembered her phone number. She gave you her phone number, and you remembered it, which is blows my mind. You can remember a number just like that.
Well, I got to tell you this: the very first girlfriend I had, I still remember her phone number.
Really?
And you can check this out because people don't believe it. UB2119. Now, that doesn't sound like a phone number. That's how it used to be. It used to be 2 letters and then the 4 numbers because there weren't that many phones. UB2119 was her name was Sandy. That was her and that was in about 1958. So look, I met Lucy at a party. I was with my girl. Lucy's husband was a bit of a flirt, was chatting my girl up a bit. But I found Lucy interesting. I thought she's probably the most attractive woman there, and we're talking about Russian literature. She showed a bit of interest in me, and so eventually I said, look, how about meeting up? She said, I don't know. I said, well, give me a phone number. And she gave me a phone number. I think she admitted later she didn't got to remember it, but I remembered it, yeah. So we're talking 10 numbers. It's not a lot. It's
still impressive. It is still impressive. Yeah. You know, you get those things now where you have to text the code and they're like 4 or 5 letters. I still struggle with them, mate. So
Nah, you wouldn't struggle with them. Yeah, quite often you'll see the last 4 numbers will be a date. Like it might be 1972, and it's a date. Yeah. So anyway, I did remember the number. So I rang her, probably rang her 2 or 3 times. Eventually she agreed to come out, and it just went from there. Her husband was a bastard. He was a professor, but they had a daughter. He's bashing her a couple of times. Didn't give her any money. She was lucky to have money to buy bread, and or even get a bus. And the fact is that in Russia, he was running around when she was pregnant, throwing it at her. And I've got an article that she wrote for one of the main magazines I get at over in Russia, and she said all this. She said it all in that he'd bashed her. He bashed her over a pot plant. Once he come in, there was a pot plant there, and what's this pot plant doing? Oh, I got it. And he bashed her because we can't afford it. How can we afford a pot plant? He's a professor, this guy. And I think he was spending a lot of his money on pros, to be honest with you. Anyway, he's running around with a lot of women over there in Russia, and she was going to leave him, and he talked her into coming over here. They had a daughter over here. Eventually, she and I got into an affair, and she decided to leave him, and got pretty heavy an affair, and so it's just we had custody battles over the daughter, and then we were getting on top in the end, even though they didn't like me because I was the creme, he was the professor. He was doing things like getting the girl to run away, and the police would get called, stuff like that. And she was in danger. Lucy was worried she was in danger. And it was a game to her. Once we had her home and Lucy sang out, she's gone. And I said, look, you cut around there to the tunnel and across the park. And I said, I'll run up on the highway. And I got in the car because we knew she's probably going to his place, a place called Cook. Went up, got on the highway there, and sure enough, she's over on the other side of the street trying to cross. Parked the car, motor running, half on a footpath, half in the gunner because peak hour. Ran across and grabbed her, threw her over my shoulder. And I remember she saying, damn, and I've got her, put her in the car. She wasn't protesting, just put her in the car and drove off. No one did anything. No one reported it. There was never a report about it. And I said to Lucy, I could have been a predator.
Could have been anyone.
Yeah, and that's when she really got worried. And we were really worried about it. And it's just, we had constant battles in and out of court all the time. And they favoured him all the time. But when she did a property hearing, when she left him, she did a property hearing. And I'll never forget this. I'll put this in a book, actually. we're there waiting to go in, and he's talking. We saw him talking to two cops. Next thing they come over to me over the side and said, "Come over here." And I said, "What are you talking about?" They said, "We've been told you got a gun on you." I said, "What are you talking?" I said, "What?" They said, "Stand up against the wall." So I had to stand with the thing against the wall, hands against the wall, and they frisked me down. And I said, "I got a phone in the left-hand pocket." They found a phone, and there was nothing there. And they said, "We apologise, we have to act." I said, "That guy over there is causing more drama and doing more things illegally." They said, "Well, you'll have to report that, and we're going to have to do that." And they walked away. So Lucy went into court to do the property thing. She had an assassin's gun on her that I'd given her. It was a little thing. It had 22 little revolver with two little barrels. With it fired 2 shots, and he fit it in her hand. She went into court with that, and he was looking at us laughing, because he thought he'd got a victory. And I said to her, "If only he knew how close he came."
Yeah. If he actually knew the full picture.
Yeah. But anyway, she lost the. They wouldn't let me in court. The magistrate stopped me going to court, and she lost because he just said, "Oh, no, you've left your husband. Get your boyfriend to look after you." Something to that effect.
Wow.
That's how biased they were.
Yeah. Even though with all of that, like with where you'd grabbed her and could have been anyone, all of it, was that all?
No, we were winning that case. We were winning that gradually. We had more and more custody of her. We finished up. We had 5 days. Started off, he had 5 days. In the end, we had the 5 days. He had 2. Yeah. But what happens, he asked for my record. Shouldn't have been given it. Said that because he wanted to check if I was a pedophile or a drug dealer. And my lawyer got up and said, "I can assure the court he isn't." But a judge still favoured him and said, "Well, he can have it." He said, "But he's not to show it to anyone." Guess what he did? He got all copies made. He went down to school and gave it to them.
Everyone.
Where I hired cars, neighbours, then sent them all around the police station all around Australia. He hit the jackpot because in Queensland they hated me up there because of the escape. And they couldn't charge me with that escape up there. And they just hated me ever since. Because what happened, when they took me to hospital, and we haven't talked about that escape up in Queensland, but they took me to hospital and they didn't make out a warrant. So I was illegally taken from the jail. So I couldn't have escaped custody because I wasn't in custody. And I've never been charged with a major escape.
Because it wasn't, obviously, technically, an escape.
So anyway, they got a warrant where I hadn't reported on bail or had broken parole by not reporting to the parole officer about 30 years ago. And they were going to take me back to Queensland, so we took off. The cops were sympathetic. They said, "They're going to grab you tomorrow." They told us, federal cops.
Really, yeah?
Yeah, they were on our side, federal cops. They knew what he was like.
Yeah.
So we took off, and but from there I hit a bank, got away with the first bank, then started gambling again, trying to get money for us because we lost the bond, we lost the house, lost the car, and so the second bank I hit, I got caught at Barrel, arrested at Barrel, and that was like a nightmare. I hit that bank, come out, and there was an off-duty cop just nearby, and I ran out, and no one else would have worried about it. He just felt that something sus come after me, and then the bank manager come after me. And what made it hard for me was bloody red smoke starts coming out of the bag. Never in all my life robbing banks that I've been caught. A friend of mine got caught in Perth, but I never had it happen because I didn't take the 5s. And I used to put the money in the 5s. And I told her no 5s, so she must have put it in someone else. And so the smoke's going off. Getting chased by this off-duty cop. I didn't know he was a cop. Get into a lane, and there's a car between us. And I pointed the gun at him and said, "Fuck off, or I'll shoot you." And he picked up a rock and went bang through it at me. He missed me by that much, and said, "That's a toy." So I went bang, fired one into the ground, and went over his head. And said, "That's a toy, is it?" And he fired another rock at me, but then I went off, and he didn't come. Well, in the meantime, cars are going past, and they're ringing the police, and they're ringing everybody. They're ringing the radio station. You know, what is that a movie they're making down there? Because we don't recognise the actors, you know. I mean, it's just unbelievable, isn't it? And anyway, I got away from him, but by then, the whole town was surrounded, and so I finished up getting caught and arrested. Had red dye on my hands, the whole works. And
remember, the gun was red as well, wasn't it?
The gun was red, but they never found the money, and they still say to this day Lucy was there, got away with the money, and financed the escape. That's what they say, but I say she didn't. She was never proven to be there, and so that's it. But that's what they say. I say that I think some corrupt cops found the money.
Yeah.
And cashed in on it. Besides, it had the red dye all over it, so that's why I tossed it away.
Yeah, once that red dye's there, it's
right.
done anyway, isn't it? Yeah. You can't do nothing with it anyway. We then get to the point. This is really fascinating. We spoke about it again. Something else a little earlier, that when you were in prison, you wrote a letter every day, numbered them, and dated them to Lucy.
Yeah, when they she got me out in the helicopter. We talking about that at all or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just when I got arrested, she come out and said, "Look, I've got to get you out." And I said, well, I looked around and I thought, this is maximum security. It's I've got huge security on me because I'd escaped from Queensland. And just briefly, I'd say in Queensland, I'd had a girl who that I used to run with, and she slipped me it was a replica, but she drilled a hole in the middle of it and painted it black so it looked real. And I was at hospital, and although they were armed, I got the drop on. I was handcuffed, pointed the gun at them, and turned around and ran out. And she was waiting in a car. She slipped me the gun. We got away. I was out for about 12 months.
That was the Queensland one.
That was the Queensland one, yeah. So they were aware of that, and they knew I'd had other goes. So I had huge security on me. So I said, Lucy, when I go to court, I've got ankle cuffs, handcuffs, and a special squad. And it really disillusioned her. And when we went to, I had to go to Queanbeyan Court over a ridiculous traffic matter, can you believe it? And she caught a train up there to come and see me. And she come in on a visit. They get it because they knew me at Queanbeyan. We used to live up there, and let me have a visit with me. But we're separated. I couldn't touch her. She's got the gun. All right, so she said, we can get out. I said, how? She said, in the court, I'll slip you the gun, and we're away. And I said, well, you haven't got a car, you come by a train, what are we going to do? I said, I'm here because I got caught in a town, full of cops. I said, every cop in Queanbeyan knows this. I said, Les, we'll get killed. And she just realised then, she said, I can't get you out of another place, Silverwater. And I said, look, I've got an idea, and that's when we decided the chopper, have a go at the chopper. Yeah.
And then how did you go about planning that? What's the next step of that?
Well, if you knew the system, you'd know that it's pretty almost impossible to get away in a helicopter in most jails because they will shoot. And they see a helicopter, they're straight on it, they're ready. They're not supposed to shoot, but they will. And that proved it with me. So when I went to Silverwater, I really think it was fate what happened, because when I went to Silverwater, I went out the Oval and I saw maybe 10, 12 helicopters come over. And I realised they're visiting the Olympic site they're coming over to look at that because we had the Olympics coming up the next year. And I thought, I looked at the screws and I went out again another time. I watched the screws and they're mostly Indians, you know, and they mostly stick together. I said, they're just not taking any notice of these helicopters. You know, a helicopter could swoop in here, pick you up and be out before they even realise what was going on. And I thought there's a guard tower way back. I knew it had a rifle. That was the only one. That was well back. So by the time they got there, undid the lock, got it out, lined up, we'd be away. You know? So I thought, maybe that's the way out. But how do I get a helicopter? So I run it by Lucy. And she said, this is brilliant. I said, well, it means you've got to hijack a helicopter. She said, I can do that. I can do that. Yeah. And I knew nothing phased Lucy. I knew that if she said she'd do something, she would. And I thought, well, think about it. You know. She said, I've already thought about it. We'll do it. So I said, all right, you go out and do a trial run. I want you to do a trial run. But we had another visit coming. I said, I'll talk to you on the next visit. Well, in the meantime, we didn't know anything about helicopters. There's a helicopter pilot comes over, gets extradited from South Africa to Scotland to New Zealand to Australia. Then they bring him to Silverwater. I mean, the odds are getting astronomical, right? Then they put him in my wing. There's 20 wings. Then I've got him in my cell. Now, by now, I could have won Tats Lotto, right?
Honestly,
yeah,
could have.
Yeah.
The odds are even better than that.
So all of a sudden, I got a real helicopter pilot, compliments of the Commissioner of Corrective Services. That's what I said later on when I got out. And that, but he had, I think, about 8,000 hours experience. He had helicopter books, and he was a con man. Later on, he got out and conned Russell Crowe, got a job with Russell Crowe.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, Russell Crowe hates him. I think if Russell Crowe ever gets him, he'll whack him, you know. You know, I mean, build him, you know.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he started conning me. He knew who I was, that I could get you out of here. $10,000. I said, well, look, I've got all the money from the bank. Lucy's got the money.
He was going to take the 10K and go, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was trying to con me. And at the same time, I was conning him, finding out. I found out about a transponder. I looked at a helicopter thing and didn't know what it was. What's this transponder? So that's a silent alarm for if you're getting hijacked or something, they press that. Bang. I told Lucy, you go on a trial flight, see where the transponder is. When you do this, if he goes for the transponder, you've got to knock his hand away straight away. And that's what happened. When she finally did it, I actually, the morning that we were doing it, I rang her, and quickly, it was hard to get on the phone. I had to tell guys I was ringing a lawyer, got her. She was near the airport. She'd already done the trial run. She come back after the trial run and said, I can do it. I said, did you have a look at the transponder? She said, yeah. And I said, okay. So when she got into the chopper, he went for the transponder. And she knocked his hand away and then took off his earphones, and that was it. He was out of business. He couldn't do anything from there. And the funny thing is that I took the helicopter pilot out with me, and I thought, just there's a chance this guy's going to land and jump out and run away. Well, I'll run in with my own helicopter pilot. You know? That's why they hate me, because we had a backup plan.
You had it all sorted.
Yeah. So they've really given me a hard time for the whole time I was in jail, and her, because look, what it is. In anything, any jail, there are weaknesses. Now, we showed them where the weaknesses were, and they should have taken advantage of that and probably put wires across that oval. They could have done that. They didn't do it. They said they were going to do it. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
So they're their own worst enemy to a degree. They talk about doing things, but in the end it costs too much or this or that, and they don't do it. Instead of that, they build new jails, spend multi-millions on new jails, somehow find more crims to put in there, more jobs for judges, more jobs for crims, more jobs for cops and screws, and they're not worried about rehabilitation. You know. So we were lucky. I think it was fate. I think it was fate that that helicopter pilot came at that time, that I got him into a cell. It's almost impossible odds. And I think what I've been shot at, actually they fired at us 3 times, and they hit us 3 times. They hit us 3 times, and they just missed a cable by about half an inch that runs through to the rotor, and it would have brought us down. So, and the pilot said that later. He said they went very close to bring us down. So, the way I see it, it was fate that it was meant to happen. And I think it's fate that I'm still alive, that I haven't been shot, killed, and that I was meant to live this long. I was meant to be here 55 years later after, where I have an appendage and be able to write about it and say, look, this is not how the Royal Commission. The Royal Commission said nobody got bashed down. Well, they were testing me from 100 guys saying we did, and this is the way it really happened with a helicopter. Look, you know, all this stuff out there that, you know, I had to get out, you know, because other guy was going, I've asked him, all that stuff. Up in Queensland, I was busted out by a gang because I owed money for gambling, you know. All this stuff, Killick will shoot it out, all headline stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So write books, do podcasts, and just tell it the way it was. You know, I'm not making any excuses. It's bad, there's some of the things I've done, but that's the way it went down. It didn't go down any other way. It didn't go down the way the media. It went down the way I just told you. Lucy was treated absolutely terribly. She was first time in jail, and she was treated like the major female criminal in Australia. She was in there with people that had committed horrible, horrific crimes, killing babies, murdering husbands, cutting people open, shooting people, all those. She was the only one wearing orange. That's how much security they put on her. And they put her, first 3 months, put her in a cell with nothing, and let her out an hour a day in a kitchen to walk around the kitchen. That was it. No visits, nothing.
So she's been treated worse than people killing babies.
She got treated worse than me.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, what they did to her, they did everything they could to break her. And they couldn't break us. We wrote about 4,500 letters between us. But she can't beat God, and she found God, and that was it. I had no chance once she found God, and that was the end of it. But I've always wished her well. I told her about the book. I met her, and I went against the rules, and parole wouldn't let us meet, but I did meet her, and we had a discussion. She didn't want the book, but I said I'm putting the book out, and I know she's not happy with the book, but I think I've been very fair to her in the book, actually. And her daughter said it's a brilliant book, so at least I got that from her daughter. And her daughter actually used the basis of that book for the documentary she was going to do. Unfortunately, Lucy pulled out of it.
Yeah, and it's important for you. Me and Jay are big on this when we do these podcast channels, is that we give you an opportunity to say it exactly how it is. There is no, I've watched, like I said to you, I've done a lot of research on yourself, your journey, and we've had brilliant convos today, but the media can portray things in certain ways. They can pick and choose what they say. We don't want to do that. We wanted to give you a voice to just say it as it was.
Well, I really appreciate that. And just before I was due out, I mean, I put a short story in a contest and got second prize in the Australian short story contest. It was never mentioned. I did 12 months with Violent Offenders Therapeutic Program, which is a great program, and I work with psychs, and was able to do that and get great reports from those. And I still work with them. I saw them last week at a Christmas party. Went there, and talk to them while I'm still in touch with them. Now, the thing is, they help me and I help others. But, you know, when I first got out, I spent a couple of years working up Rosemeadow, volunteer base, helping picking up kids before breakfast, training them and feeding them, and we were doing that. Now I do lectures, lecture New South Wales University quite a few times, other universities. They wouldn't let me go interstate to do it up until now, 12 months ago. I've written 6 books actually, written 6 books, lots of short stories, done lots of interviews, and I've always told it the way it is. I've never differentiated from that. Most of the money I've made from the books, and I've got documented proof that I've donated to underprivileged kids. And I've sent most of that money over to the Philippines, but quite a bit of it over to Kyrgyzstan too. And a little bit, I even sent some to Africa yesterday. But I don't donate as much as I used to, but I do send enough to help these kids live a better life. And I feel good about that. I feel good. And I feel good when I'm talking to young people that I know are on the edge. And I say to those kids, look, you don't want to be like me because, you know, I've spent 30 years in jail. My life's been not good. It hasn't been a good life. But you want to be like what I am now and go out and believe that it's wrong to point guns at people, that it's wrong to rob people, and it's good to help people, and that you'll feel good about yourself. And you can't beat, and I pointed out to him too, if I'd have worked just in a normal job, instead of being in jail for those 30 years, I'd have probably had my own house and everything else that I haven't got. So, you know, crime is for mugs. It's a mugs game. And these days, with all the cameras and surveillance around, they can track you down from the time you leave your house. So, believe me, if you're thinking about a crime, a life of crime, there is absolutely no future in it at all, and you will go to jail. And that, I'm not preaching, I'm just pointing it out the way it is. Yeah. And I'm also saying that when you steal a lot of money, it doesn't make you feel great. But if you save up a lot of money and you earn it the hard way, and I'm doing that now, it's a great feeling because you've earned it the hard way, and you've earned it, and you know you've earned it.
Yeah. It's a really good point and powerful message to those, like you say, to be able to be in your situation and have these chats with youngsters that are on the edge. That's life-changing, John. You're changing lives.
Well, it's life-changing, but we're not doing enough. See, the trouble is I'll go and talk to kids, but I won't see them again for 2 weeks. Now, in that time, they're going back to their peers. They're doing the things they're doing.
Yeah.
And what you need to get through to people, I really believe if I'd had a mentor, I wouldn't have finished in jail. And I think we need mentors. The system should be looking, instead of building all these new jails, we should be building rehabs. We should be getting mentors and giving them maybe 10 kids and paying, to look after 10 kids, see them every day, see how they're going, have an interview with them. And you're not going to say, well, some of them are going to lie to you, some are going to do this, but some are going to listen to you, and some are going to come good. And I think that's money well spent instead of building new prisons, because we don't. I reckon 85% of people in jail don't have to be there. I really believe that. I think there's 15% of the people in jail need to be there. You can't go around murdering people and raping people and doing these. You can't go around robbing banks and escaping in helicopters and not expect to go to jail. But a lot of stuff people are going for jail now, it's just because they're repeat offenders or they just get on a treadmill of crime.
Yeah.
And it's mainly to do with drugs and peer pressure. They can get off, but they need help. They need leaders. It's like with a jury. You get a jury, and there's 12 in a jury. You can bet that two of those jurors are going to sway the other 10. They're going to sway the other. Most of that, the other 10 are going to go with what they one or two say. And those two are usually going to be guided by the judge.
Yeah.
So that's what it's like with peer pressure, that most of the kids are going to go with the leaders, what they're saying. And so we need, if the leaders really should be mentors that are serious about getting those kids back on the right track. And you need money. and they're closing down, you know, NGOs, non-government organisations. They're closing them down. Instead of building more and funding more, they're actually closing them down. So they need to wake up. The government needs to wake up and put more money into rehabilitation.
And actually solving the issues.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As we wrap up, because I know you've got things to do in Melbourne tonight, John, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, look, I'd like to say that I come down to Pentridge, and this is about the 5th time I've come down. And each time I've come down, I've been looked after by a group called Pentridge Voices. And what they do, they've got a function. They've helped me. And I spoke to National Trust today, who put a lot of these tours on as well. And they told me themselves, that the guy from National Trust, that Pentridge Voices helped put them on a map, helped put Pentridge back on a map. And what they do, and they've got no bias, they just interview old crims or prison officers who have been in jail or had something to do with a jail, and they get their stories. And they record the stories, and they keep it for posterity. And they've interviewed some really very interesting characters that have got some great stories. That should be books. And they've actually put out 2 books. And without it, you look back now, if we'd have had this stuff going 50 years ago, some of the famous or infamous crims that have died, without telling their story, we could have heard it from their point of view. Yeah. And we could have heard it from the point of view of some of them prison officers who would have had great stories to tell as well. And we haven't. So they're doing that, and I just think that they do it on a voluntary basis. And I just think that we should acknowledge that they're doing a great job and they're not getting paid for it, and they're unbiased, and they've been doing it for about 3 years. And I'm personally here would like to thank them, because they've done a lot for me, and I hope they can keep going and doing this, because it's a great service.
Amazing. No, that is really good, and yeah. I agree completely. We know you're doing great work, like you mentioned, sending money to underprivileged kids in Philippines and other places. We're going to make a donation, myself and Jay.
It's greatly appreciated. They will, because you know, $50 is a fair bit of money over there.
Yeah. And look, we really appreciate you making the effort to come and see us today. I know you've been chatting with Jay for months now, so it was a bit surreal being able to pick you up today, but we appreciate your effort of coming here, and we thank you very much for sharing your story.
Well, you showed me that the traffic here is just as bad as Sydney, you know?
I did, yeah.
Friday night, it's not a good time to come.
It's not. No, it isn't.
No, look, I've enjoyed the chat, and maybe we can do another one down the track.
100%.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. Yeah, definitely.
That'd be great, yeah. I'll tell you about all the fights I lost.
Yeah, we'll do it.
I'll be a short episode, John.
Thanks a lot, John. Cheers.
Yes, thanks, guys.
As always, thanks for watching my videos, guys. If you're at this point listening to this and you haven't subscribed, you haven't liked anything, you haven't hit the notification bell, well, you're not really supporting the channel. I'm not sure I can do this much longer. So make sure you go, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and like all my videos.